you done now? Oh, Brad, what have you done now?
Doc! Okay, relax, Doc. It's me. It's Marty.
No, it can't be. Just sent you back to the future.
Yeah. Oh, I know you did send me back to the future, but I'm back. I'm back from the future.
Great Scott.
Wait a minute, Doc. Are you telling me that you built a time machine? Out of a DeLorean?
The way I see it, if you're gonna build a time machine into a car, why not do it with some style?
Whoa, this is heavy.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Back to the Future, the podcast, the only podcast looking back in time with the greatest film trilogy of all time, Back to the Future. I'm your friend in time, Brad Gilmore. We are back with another incredible episode of the podcast for you this week. Hope you've enjoyed the kickoff episode. Hope you enjoyed listening to Peter Rosenberg last week with Daniel J. Glenn, and of course, the illustrious man himself, Mr. Bob Gale, the co-creator of this entire universe that we've loved for the past 3.5 decades, Back to the Future, of course. I hope you enjoyed all of those. And what was cool about this season is I've gotten to touch base, like I've said before, with fans of Back to the Future who you might recognize their name or you might know their work. And this is one that I am really excited to finally share to everyone. And I want to give actually a listener, a fan, some credit. I want to give my man from Peoria, Illinois, Mitch Gilfillan. Mitch Gilfillan. I hope I'm doing the last name right. Gilfillan. Mitch Gilfillan from Peoria, Illinois. I put out a tweet maybe a month and a half ago or more. I said, hey, who are some people you want to hear on Back to the Future, the podcast? Maybe a celebrity guest, somebody involved with the franchise. And of course, a lot of people said, oh, I want you to have Michael J. Fox on, or I want you to have this guy on, or whomever, right? And Mitch had a great suggestion. He tagged Mikey Day from Saturday Night Live on the tweet and said, oh, Mikey Day would be a great guest. And I was like, oh, you know what? Mikey Day would be a great guest. And then, as the space-time continuum would have it, Mikey responded to the tweet, and then we started DMing one another. And today, on Back to the Future, the podcast, Saturday Night Live's own Mikey Day. You know Mikey Day from his work on Saturday Night Live, of course. Also, I first saw Mikey Day on Wild and Out with Nick Cannon over there on the MTV network all those years ago. Really, really funny guy. Massive Back to the Future fan. And Mikey and I talked for about an hour about all things Back to the Future, some sketches that he actually wrote for Robot Chicken that never made air that were Back to the Future themed, things that he's done at Saturday Night Live, and interactions he's had with people like Steven Spielberg in regards to Back to the Future and everything that he's been able to do over there at maybe the most iconic television show of all time. It's either Saturday Night Live or The Tonight Show, and Mikey Day is a featured performer on Saturday Night Live, most recently appearing in sketches with guys like Jim Carrey, who I think might be a good doc. We all know I love Eddie Murphy. Maybe Mikey would have some insight on Jim Carrey. So we're about to get into that interview with Mikey Day here in a minute. Also, go take the time to go over to Amazon and pre-order Michael J. Fox's new book, No Time Like the Future. I just got my advanced copy in the mail a couple of days ago, and I'm already about 40 pages in. It's phenomenal stuff. It's really, really good. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a Michael J. Fox fan or because I got an early copy. I really do enjoy the book. A lot of cool stories, even in those first 40 pages. I'm going to hopefully finish it by the time we do the podcast next week. But go pre-order No Time Like the Future right now. Do it for Marty McFly. But what we're about to do right now, we're going to talk to another Michael. Mikey Day joins me right now on Back to the Future, the podcast. And he joins me right now. You might recognize him from Saturday Night Live, or I first saw this man on Wild and Out back in the day. He is Mikey Day. Mikey, how you doing, man?
Thanks for having me, Brad. I'm so excited.
Yeah, man, we're gonna talk about Back to the Future. You know, I put it out on Twitter. I said, "Yo,
Hell
who
yeah.
are some big Back to the Future fans out there?" And your name came
Yeah,
up. A lot of people suggested you. So, talk to me. Like, why is Back to the Future your favorite film of all time?
absolutely. And thank you to the Twitter sphere for hooking us up here. Yeah, absolutely. I saw it when I was, I believe, 6 years old, and I saw it. My mom took me to see it. This is how crazy I'm dating myself, and how crazy movies were back then. I saw it. I think my mom took me to see it in January, and it came out in the summer of 85, and I saw it in January of 86, and it was still in the movie theaters. That's how crazy it was.
Wow,
And then I
man.
yeah, and then I rented it ad nauseum. And then when the second and third one came out, I was like 10, 9 or 10. So I saw those in the theater, and then it just began a lifelong obsession. I've wanted to buy a DeLorean forever. Not necessarily the souped up time machine replica version. I'm obsessed with getting a DeLorean, and I just haven't pulled the trigger yet, but I want one so bad. Plus in New York, I'm like, do I want to pay $600 a month to park this thing
And never get to drive it.
and never get to drive it? And it also, because I have an 8-year-old son, I'm like, taking him to soccer games isn't going to work. It's a 2-seater. So imagine my wife would be like, you bought a DeLorean? Because we don't have a car right now. You bought a DeLorean as the family car? This is so not accommodating of a family lifestyle. But yeah, and I feel like I've tried to devour any bit of behind the scenes information about the movie. I just have an endless fascination for it. It's just, by far the greatest movie I've ever seen. And recently showed my son all three during the summer, during like lockdown and everything, when going out there was nothing really to do. So we showed him all three, and he got into it. It was great.
Yeah,
And we have a
man.
little kids book, a Back to the Future kids book that I read him, and he was into it. But I think when we showed him the movie, he was old enough to like really truly appreciate it. Like, because I kept selling it to him, like, imagine going back in time to when Daddy was your age and being able to hang out with Mommy and Daddy. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, and what you just hit on is it's such a generational film, and it doesn't matter what stage you are in your life, you find a new thing to relate to it, right? There's something that you can relate back to yourself at that moment. Whether when you're a kid, I think the fascination is the time travel aspect
Oh,
of it. Not so
100%.
much
Yeah.
like going to the 50s, but just being able to time travel. And then as you get
Yeah.
older, you're thinking, man, if I could go back, or what were my parents like at my age? You start finding these new things to connect to it.
Yeah, it's endlessly, endlessly fascinating, and just small little things that you see every time you rewatch it. And it's also interesting to think about it if it was, obviously it shouldn't be remade, but like, it just makes you feel old. You're like, oh, if they went back now, it would be like, I would be, I guess if they went back now in 2020, it would be what, 1990, which is insane. I'm like, oh my God. I would be like, when I first saw it, the 50s to me seemed like, oh my God, that's another world. Like, that's so far removed. And now I'm to the point where if they went back, it would be 1990, my childhood. So it's a little odd to think about, but like, just everything about it is perfect. And I'm trying to think if I've written any SNL sketches necessarily about that. I did. Oh, I wrote on Robot Chicken for a while, an Adult Swim show and they use like stop motion action figures and as puppets, and they do a lot of like pop culture stuff. So they've done Back to the Future stuff, and I tried to write one. This is such a weird deep cut, but it was it was just like a shot of Doc's answering machine, and it's just the Libyans calling him, being like, "Hey, this bomb it looks like pinball machine. I don't know, like maybe we're doing something wrong. Anyway, give us a call back," and then beep, "Hey, it's us again." But it was such a weird deep cut, like, oh, the Doc's answering machine that the Libyans keep calling. But I'm trying to think of anything else maybe in SNL that I've tried to get in Back to the Future references.
Didn't y'all do something about your future self or something like that?
Oh yeah. We did my future self, like looking in the mirror. Like it was kind of based on those milk commercials where it was like, "Hey, keep drinking milk and you'll be strong." And then he sees himself as a teen and then an adult. So I saw myself as an adult, and I had a weird girlfriend. I think it was Sandra Oh played her, and I'm like, what? Who is that, and why am I dating her? Because she seems insane. She's drinking a Four Loko at noon. Yeah, but sometime hopefully we'll do a Back to the Future, some sort of sketch. I know before I got there, they had done the like 30th anniversary auditions. Like the SNL often does those audition pre-tapes where it just shows a bunch of people do celebrity impressions auditioning for the film. But I remember on the 30th anniversary, I saw the movie at the Twin Pines Mall where they shot it.
Oh man, talk about that. How cool
that was
that
awesome.
Feeling? Yeah.
It was, and I think they did it. It was in October, so I think it was the day Marty goes back, or maybe that was November, but it was definitely a date important in the movie that they screened it, and they had a DeLorean outside, and Claudia Wells talked before the movie, and it was just cool being in the parking lot. And then people were just rolling around in DeLoreans. Like if you have a DeLorean, you're going to that just to hang out. And so my buddy and I like reenact, on our iPhones, shot me rolling down that little hill that Marty rolls down and watching, made our own little films, just totally geeked out. And then I saw on Twitter, or it was on YouTube or something, but someone just parked like a replica of Doc's big white truck just in the parking lot, and it was just there. I'm like, that's awesome. I wish I was back in California to go see it, but I don't know when that was. But I love that it was just kind of there. Like, I don't know what it was part of, but someone just took video. They're like, there's Doc's van in the literal place it was parked in the movie.
So let me ask you this. You said that you've watched all three, obviously, countless times. And this is something I like to ask everybody. You brought up Claudia Wells. Which Jennifer are you more a fan of? OG Claudia Wells, or are you like Elizabeth Shue in 2 and 3? Elizabeth Shue is great, but I really identify her with Karate Kid, stuff like that.
Yeah.
To me, Claudia Wells is the OG Jennifer, and she's the one that I go with. And maybe no more beautiful 1980s girlfriend of all time than Claudia Wells.
Jennifer Parker?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I agree with you there. I mean, obviously, Elizabeth Shue was awesome and, just as beautiful and stuff. But there's something about the original film that you just kind of, that's Jennifer. And I think she was something with her mom or something, and she couldn't do it, which is a bummer. But I feel like Elizabeth Shue did fantastic. And it's so funny how they always say, like, we didn't think there'd be a sequel, we just put her in the car. It is really funny how they just leave her out there. I'm always like, oh, is that the best idea?
Yeah, let's just knock her out and leave her in an alleyway.
Yeah, that part of the plan seems very suspect. Yeah, I'll probably go with original OG Claudia Wells as Jennifer. Hey, stranger. And I remember being a kid being like, that is the pinnacle of beauty. Like, it made she made such an impression on me. So it's hard not to see anyone but her as Jennifer. But not to knock Elizabeth Shue, she did fantastic. I'm old. I'm old.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a long-winded way of saying Claudia Wells.
Claudia Wells for sure. Now you say you've rewatched it a lot and picked up on things that maybe you didn't see before. What are some of those things that Mikey Day has picked up on countless rewatches?
Oh man, probably nothing that hasn't been pointed out a million times. But it is interesting to watch, to like see the deleted scenes and then picture them there. Like, what's so funny with the whole chloroform thing that they cut, that which is crazy that he chloroforms his dad. But that when you see him next and he just goes, you weren't at school, what's going on? And he's like, I overslept. You just buy it. And then, but knowing that it was chloroform, but it still works. A lot of that stuff is super interesting. I don't know if I've picked up anything that like you or obviously people listening to this wouldn't know, but I just kind of, it's just interesting to look at like little things in the set and stuff that you haven't really noticed. And just weird little details and stuff like that. I always think that woman who, after he shows up in the 50s in the first one, after he sees Lion Estates is all gone, and he goes up to that car, and that lady's like, "Don't stop me, we'll die."
I know.
So extreme. Yeah, and just like, because I lived in LA for a long time before moving out here, and that in 2015 was that Future Day, official Future Day.
Yeah,
the day
October 21st,
yeah.
2015. Mm-hmm.
There was stuff in Burbank at the Burger King where the exterior of Doc's lab in 1985 was shot. So I went. I was weirdly there getting my son something at Toys R Us in the Valley, and all these people were out, and I was like, oh, they're here for Future Day. But it's interesting to see like the layout of the street and everything and where the actual set was. It's just fun to look at the geography. And I feel bad for the people who own the Marty McFly house, because I feel like there's so many YouTube videos of people like doing this outside the house. But it's still like whatever those electrical towers are still there. It's like still very much the Marty McFly house. Like they didn't change they didn't like tear it down and build some like modern new. It's very much the Marty McFly house.
Did you ever go by the Gamble house, which is the Doc Brown 55 mansion in Pasadena? Did you ever pass by that?
No, I have never been there. I would drive by that church on Franklin where they shot the whatchamacallit, all the Enchantment Under the Sea stuff. Oh, and that reminds me, in high school, I was on ASB, which is like the student government at my high school, and we made our homecoming theme my junior year Back to the Future, just so we could have an Enchantment Under the Sea dance.
So wait, you had the actual Enchantment Under the Sea dance?
Yeah, we had an Enchantment Under the Sea dance.
That's awesome.
And it was just so funny because normally homecoming themes are like A Night Under the Stars or Elegance or something, and ours was Back to the Future. But we had like this whole homecoming skit at the game because it was a big deal, like announcing the homecoming queen. So I was Doc and my buddy was Marty, and we came out in a DeLorean, and like during the halftime show at the football game, the homecoming game, and we came out and we went, we've been to the future. We know who the homecoming queen is. And talking about it was super cheesy, but it was just so much fun to have it be Back to the Future. And we had like during the homecoming assembly, like we had the freshman class president dress up as the clock tower lady. She was going up to people going, "Save the clock tower." So we were such dorks that we made it our homecoming theme, but it was pretty cool. And we had a DeLorean and stuff. Which they're just cool cars. Like when you see one in person, like you just have a response to it.
No, absolutely. I'm here in Houston, and the headquarters, the national headquarters for DeLorean, is actually randomly here in Houston, Texas. So I went out to the DeLorean headquarters. They had the time machine in the lobby way, so I got to sit in it, do the time circuits on, made all the noises. Yeah, it was awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Incredible.
They're not like the greatest car in the world to drive,
right?
but they're pretty cool, man. And,
have you driven one?
I got to drive one when I was there, right? And then when I went to go back to take some publicity shots for my book, I again got to drive one around a little bit, and they're fun. You definitely feel like Marty McFly when you're in it, but it's not like it's kind of like a go-kart. It feels what it feels like.
Yeah. Does it not have power steering? I heard the steering is like difficult.
Yeah, it's a rough drive. It's a rough drive, but it is what it is. I don't know if you ever obviously Alec Baldwin's on Saturday Night Live a lot, and he played John DeLorean.
Yeah, he played John DeLorean.
Did you talk to him about that at all?
I never really talked to him about it, but I want to. Like when I see him, usually when I see him, it's in the it's on Saturdays and everything's like, he's getting made up as Trump and stuff. And I'll talk to him a little bit, but I keep forgetting to bring up that he played DeLorean. I need to talk to him about that. Be like, did you get any cool DeLorean insights or any stuff that would be interesting? As a Back to the Future dork, that would be cool.
That'd be cool for me to talk to about. Yeah. It's actually funny is I was watching Saturday Night Live last Saturday, obviously. And
nice.
you were in the opening sketch, the cold open for the debates, the town hall debates, and you got to play George Stephanopoulos. And as Jim Carrey was doing his Biden with the white hair and kind of the big motions, I did have that thought of if they ever did Back to the Future again, there's Doc Brown. Jim Carrey could be Doc Brown.
Jim Carrey as Doc Brown. That would be great. And I feel like in the modern one, who did I think? You have it be a girl and Zendaya. I was like, Zendaya would be a cool Marty.
She would be a cool Marty.
Right? Going back, like, what's going on? Yeah, it's crazy to think about if they redid it. It would be so like, I hate it, but I'm interested.
Well, my thing is like, and I've talked about it a lot, it's like the when they redid Ghostbusters with the all-female cast, is I was a little hesitant at first, but then I was thinking, man, if it's good, that's just more Ghostbusters. And if it's bad, it doesn't take away from the quality of the first two to me. So why in the hell not? Give it a shot. And there's a book called The Back to the Future Ultimate Visual History. I don't know if you've seen it. But it's a beautiful
I've
coffee
seen
table
it,
book. It's definitely one to pick up, but they have a cast list of everyone they called in for the parts.
Oh,
and
really?
One of them for Doc was Eddie Murphy. Back in '85, they called Eddie Murphy in for Doc. And I did
not know that.
Yeah, but I'm thinking now, Eddie Murphy now would probably be a killer Doc as well.
Oh my God, Eddie Murphy would be amazing. That's so funny. I had no idea they called in Eddie Murphy. That's crazy.
And that must have been, was he still on SNL in '85? Or was he 80?
Yeah.
85? He might have been.
He might have been gone by that point. I think he was like 80. Because I know after they did those first 5 years and then Lorne was gone for like 5 years. So it was in between 80 and 85. It might have been like 84, 83. But yeah, that would have been like peak when Eddie Murphy was like beginning his rise in movies and like being the biggest star ever.
But also a completely different movie.
Great.
But a completely different movie. It's like Axel Foley. So he would have to have been the star, really, right? I mean, it wouldn't have been much about Marty as it would have been about Doc.
Yeah, would have been a Doc origin story. You'd
Which
see him
again, I'd
making
like to
it.
see. I would like to see.
Oh my God.
Where do you rank the three?
Absolutely.
How do you rank your three? Because when I was a kid, for some
Right.
reason, three was my favorite.
Three. That's what, when my son saw it, he said three was his favorite. I'm like, what? Kids love three.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the train and stuff. Because
Train,
it's not
horses.
like he's, yeah, because it's not like he's a big, like, he was never into like cowboys. Like that wasn't, I mean, he's not opposed to Western stuff, but he was never into like the Western thing. So I was always so interested, like, oh, kids dig three. I go one the best, then two, then three. They're obviously all great, but there's just something about that first one you can't redo. And it was just so insane, yet so simple, you know what I mean? With that first one. I mean, the second one, obviously they had to heighten it, and it's awesome. And I feel like there's so much famous stuff, especially from the second one, but the first one can't be beat, in my opinion. I mean, it's hard to follow up. That must have been incredibly difficult to sit down and be like, okay, the sequel, where are they going? To help with the kids. I was always like, why are you going now? Like, it's in the future. Like, you could go tomorrow. It's okay, right?
Yeah, you don't have to leave right this second. But what's funny about two? Oh, go ahead.
No, I was always worried when he leaves that night, when he goes, look me up when you get there. And then he backs out, and then you see the light. I was always concerned that he didn't know what would be happening in the future at that exact spot. Like, what if there was another car and he hit it? I thought his planning in going into the future was a little like he should have gone somewhere more remote. Like, that's what I worried about as a kid for some reason. In my weird brain.
Yeah, well,
Anyway,
you don't want
I
to bump into
interrupted
something.
you for a tangent. Yeah, exactly.
Well, what I was going to say about two, like, I agree with you now. Mine, it goes 1, 2, 3. Sometimes it's 1, 3, 2, but mainly it's 1, 2, 3 is how I put them in order. But what I've been telling people is that second one really has the most iconic items from it. I mean, you have a hoverboard behind you. I remember
the hoverboard.
On Future Day of October 21st, 2015, these came out.
Oh my gosh, you have that.
The Pepsi Perfect.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I had to make sure that I got one of these. But
you would have. Cafe 80s.
Cafe 80s, of course. Reagan and Michael were the waiters.
Cafe 80s.
But you think about that. So hoverboard, the flying DeLorean, the almanac, the Pepsi Perfect. There's so many things that are so iconic from that second one. You have the hoverboard.
Yeah.
What else do you have in your Back to the Future collection, or is that pretty much it?
I want so much, but I'm like, should I spend $400 on a lifelike Marty McFly Hot Toys toy? And my wife's reaction, like, my wife loves Back to the Future. Like, our first probably official date was going to the Twin Pines Mall screening of it that I mentioned. But so she's obsessed with it as well. But she'd be like, how much did you spend? Just a few bucks. I have a Lego DeLorean that I built, and a Playmobil DeLorean that I just got, that under the guise of that it's for my son. Because I don't think there were any toys when the first one came out. They just didn't make toys for it. There wasn't they might have later on, or maybe there were, and I didn't have access to it. But I remember wanting a toy DeLorean more than anything, and they weren't around. There wasn't like an official, because a lot of those movies that came out around then, they always had like Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves had like so many toys associated with it. But Back to the Future, like, toys, they didn't have a lot of merchandise. But I have some DeLoreans. I have the out of time license plate.
Classic.
I got a little DeLorean, little sterling silver DeLorean for my lady for Christmas one year. And I think that's it. Colin Jost at SNL has, and I think it was a prop for that Back to the Future sketch, but he has a flux capacitor that you could, I think you could buy them for a while, a little prop flux capacitor. So I really want to steal it from his office.
Is he the other guy on Saturday Night Live who's the biggest Back to the Future fan? I mean, do y'all find yourselves in conversations?
Just me and Colin talking about it. I love just talking about this with you, though. I feel like a lot of people, if I would talk about Back to the Future this long with, they'd be like, okay, cool, man. I gotta go. Yeah, I'm sure Colin's a big fan. I mean, he wrote that sketch, but I don't know if we've ever like sat down and really hashed out Back to the Future stuff, but I'm sure he's a fan. If he's going to keep the flux capacitor, he's definitely a fan of it. But what's cool about that movie, it feels like everyone like loves it, but I definitely feel like I will talk about it whenever, and it feels like I can't find enough like information about it. Like, have you seen that screen test? Or I don't know if it's a screen test, but it's like early footage with Thomas F. Wilson and Crispin Glover.
Yeah.
And they're like, and he's like, what is that, you Irish, whoa, McFly, what is it, an Irish bug? Like, he was just ad-libbing, and that line, I think, came from that moment when he was just messing around and ad-libbing. Like, I found that a while ago and was like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Tom Wilson, to me, doesn't get enough credit for how phenomenal he is in all three of those movies, because I counted it up.
Incredible.
He plays like 7 different variations of Biff and his relatives.
7.
And they're all 100% believable. There's like even Buford Mad Dog Tannen. You don't even see Tom Wilson in it. You know what I mean? Like, I remember in Hook, I never knew that was Dustin Hoffman who was Captain Hook for the longest time.
Oh, really?
And then even as a kid, I didn't realize that Tom Wilson was Mad Dog Tannen. I thought that
was Mad Dog Tannen
some guy who looked like him to play a relative, because he does such a great job.
Yeah, he's truly phenomenal in those movies. What's your name, dude? Mad Dog Tannen is fantastic. And he just does such an incredible job about making you hate this person. Like, probably the best punch in cinematic history in the first one, when George lays out Biff. But there's the joy you get in seeing that dude get punched in the face. He does such a good job. And he does play, I can't believe he plays 7 different Biffs. Yeah.
I mean, there's Biff that we meet in the beginning of the movie, then 55 Biff, and then like subservient Biff.
Hi, Marty.
Yeah. And then old Biff, Griff, Tannen, and then Biff Horrific in the alternate 1985. So there's seven different Biffs throughout the Back to the Future franchise. Just crazy, man. I have a couple more things I want to ask you before I get you out of here, because I don't want to keep you all day. So I feel like someone who's watched the movie as many times as you have and are obsessed with it as I am, you pick up on small characters who make you laugh or who really stick out to you. You mentioned the woman and her husband in the car when they're driving by. To me, obviously Goldie Wilson comes to the mind. Mayor. Everyone thinks of that.
Mayor. Yep, perfect.
But who are some side characters that stick out to you from the Back to the Future universe?
I mean, wallet guy. I think he took his wallet. That guy is incredible. I've heard nothing about it, but I'm so interested. It feels like, to me, he had one line and like Robert Zemeckis was like, dude, this dude is funny. I don't know what it is. Let's make him say it a couple more times. I think he took his wallet. That guy's amazing. Wallet guy's incredible. I got a pit bull now. That girl's great. I'm trying to think. I love Lorraine's family in the first one too. Who the hell is John F. Kennedy?
My favorite quote in the entire movie is in that scene where, you know, Lorraine grabs Marty by the thigh, he gets up and leaves, and then his grandfather, her dad, says he's an idiot. Comes from upbringing. His parents are probably idiots too.
Probably idiots too.
It's my favorite line in all the movies. Just a great line.
If you ever date a guy who acts that way, I'll disown you.
Yeah.
No one has 2 television sets. Yeah, now it's funny. Now they'd redo it, and they're like, "Who's president in 2020? Donald Trump." Donald Trump, the guy from the game, Trump the game. Wallet guy always comes to mind. I feel like there's someone else who I'm forgetting. I mean, the band are always the Moonlighters. What's their name?
Starlighters.
The Starlighters. Forgive me. I've sinned in the Back to the Future fandom. I called them the Moonlighters. They're so good. And
led by Marvin Berry. You know, it's funny. It wasn't as overt when I was a kid, but you know, when he calls it Chuck,
yeah,
it's your cousin Marvin Berry. Like he doesn't know his cousin's last name. You know what I mean?
Marvin Berry. I mean, James Tolkien's great. He was like all over in the 80s. I remember he was in Top Gun too.
Absolutely.
He said your ego's writing, your body's writing checks, your ego's writing checks, your body can't cash. He was always getting in people's faces and yelling at them. I mean, for me, the king is always a wallet guy. I think he took his wallet.
Yeah, wallet guy's way up there. Yeah.
I heard some. Yeah. The punches in those movies are so intense. They always look like they hurt so bad. I had recently heard Jeffrey Weissman on some podcast or something talking about his experience, which it sounded like it sucked for that dude. Like, I feel bad for him, like in terms of how that all went down, and like the cast was kind of like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, it was an impossible mission that he was on.
Yeah. Crispin Glover's performance is so, I feel like he should have been nominated for an Academy Award. It's so weird, but so good. But I can imagine shooting it being like, this is either insane and bad or like next level good. I can't tell. You know what I mean? But when you see it, you're just like, yeah, that's George. He's weird.
Yeah. When I got to talk to Crispin, he was promoting a movie he was in, and I got to talk to him a little bit about Back to the Future. And the one thing that I wanted to talk to him about is because his line deliveries are so unusual, and then they're accompanied by these odd body motions. And I was just asking him, where was that coming from? Like, where did you get that? And I think he was just like, I just was feeling it, you know, this character. And it was very Crispin Glover-y, the whole interview was. And no one else could have pulled it off. And that's why I feel bad for Jeffrey Weissman to a certain extent. It was an impossible mission that he was on.
Yeah.
There's no way. And I think that he did the very best that he could with what he was given. You know what I mean? Which was a smaller role than the first. Prosthetics on his face, hung upside down to be disoriented.
Down. Did you see in the behind the scenes, there's like a shot when they're shooting it of Spielberg on set. And he says something to Jeffrey that's like, maybe a knock on Crispin Glover. I just remember.
I think he called him Crispin, or something like that. Yeah,
he did something like that. I always felt the more I hear about it, the more it seems like a very difficult situation to walk into. But I think in terms of, I'm trying to think of. I'm still on trying to think of other side characters. But I do think Crispin Glover should have been nominated for Academy Award. So 100%. Insane and good. So good.
100% should gotten a supporting actor. I mean, just a nomination. He didn't have to win it, but just a nomination. Recognize greatness when you see it.
It's so crazy. In that peanut brittle scene that where they cut out, doesn't he
Yeah.
buy a bunch of peanut brittle that they cut it out? It's so interesting. And then also the ending, how I guess Crispin Glover had an issue with the ending, that it was like about, oh, they have a better house and wealth and everything.
Yeah. Which I could
Um,
see maybe that doesn't go over now in 2020, but
right.
back in the 80s, that seemed like to be like a pretty quintessential ending.
Yeah, 100%. I remember being a kid being like, his life is, I just remember seeing that truck and being like, oh my God, that's the coolest truck I've ever seen in my life.
But what's funny is they have all this money, but they still live in the same house. It
They
just has better
still live in-
furniture.
Yeah. And decorate differently.
Yeah. And they just picked up tennis, I guess.
I know. What'd you hit your head? That he does some amazing pratfalls
Oh,
in that
Brian,
movie
what
when
have
he's
you
putting
done
on
now?
the jeans. Have you ever seen, aside from what they've released, any of the Eric Stoltz stuff? And do you think they probably won't release
So
it, right?
it's interesting that you bring that up because I heard Bob Gale before say in a documentary, it was the Back in Time documentary, he said, you know, hey, eventually maybe that'll come out, right? So he kind of left that door open. And then I had a friend who's a part of this DeLorean car club, and they did like a exclusive Q&A with Bob Gale a couple days ago or a week ago. And he said it'll never be released because it was like kind of, in his words, it was bad. And they don't want Eric
Right.
Stoltz to look bad or look worse by any means. And I'm sure Eric Stoltz, I really do wonder about Eric Stoltz. I would love to talk to him and be like, do you think about Back to the Future like every day or do you
I
never
know.
think about it? It's one of the two.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's truly crazy how much work they did on it and what the movie became. Like, it was obviously a massive hit at the time, but it's kind of its impact and like staying power and what it means. It's truly like a special movie. It's not just like, oh, it made a bunch of money and it dominated the summer. Like, it's much more than that. It's one of those movies that are truly like special to so many people. So yeah, I feel like if it was me, every day I'd be like, I don't want to see I don't want to see anything that could possibly remind me that I was a part of that. But it's also weird to see pictures and he's like wearing different stuff too.
Yeah.
Like they were like, oh, we're gonna make Marty look different as well in terms of his wardrobe. I'm just so fascinated. I just want to see scenes so bad.
I do too. And apparently it had gotten to that point to where, I mean, they had done so much on the movie, it would gotten to the point to where they were talking about, oh, so what are you going to work on next? Like, oh, yeah, I'm going to go do this TV show, or I'm going to go do this. So essentially they were wrapped. They were completely wrapped almost. And then to reshoot all of that and, I don't know. To me, and you probably know this better as a performer, whenever you nail something that first time around, and then they say, hey, we got to go reshoot that. You're like, oh, to get back in that mentality, to go do all that again, especially for someone like Christopher Lloyd, who has this big, and Crispin Glover, these big bombastic roles and unique ways of approaching their characters, to have to recapture that all again.
To go do it again, yeah. It would be like, oh, really? Can you use any of the close-ups?
Well,
because I did some good stuff there.
Tom Wilson says it's still Eric Stoltz's hand that's punching
that
him
punches
in the
him.
diner. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you see like yeah, that is crazy. I just feel like it's the holy grail of like nerd. Like, where is it? Who has it? Is it like in a vault somewhere? Did they like destroy it? It's probably not destroyed, I guess. I don't know. I'd just be so interested. Like, I would literally watch like video of them shooting every single day of that movie. Like, I'm endlessly fascinated with the process.
Yeah.
It's so just fascinating, and I'm just so intrigued by like every little behind the scenes decision and stuff. Like, it must have been I wonder how long they were like, this isn't working out. We need to change Marty. Like how long they were shooting before that kind of inkling started in their heads, you know? It's because that's intense to be like, we have to reshoot most of the movie.
To me, you would know. I feel like you would know day one.
Day one, yeah.
I feel
and
like you'd be like, well, hey, maybe we can get there. You know, maybe we can get there. Maybe we
Yeah.
can get there. And then you just realize at that point, okay, we're 6 weeks, 7 weeks into this thing, and we haven't gotten there yet.
I know, yeah.
Oh,
It's cool they had Spielberg around to be like, all right. And that whole story, how they called it, the studio guy wanted to call it like Spaceman from Pluto.
Yeah.
And then Spielberg said, they were like, that's hilarious, man. Oh my God, we laughed so hard. Thanks for the laugh. And he was like, yeah, it was a joke. It was a joke.
So you'd appreciate this. There was an Eli Roth movie that came out maybe a year ago, 2 years ago, with Jack Black called "A House with a Clock in Its Walls." And
Oh
there's
yeah.
There's
Wasn't
a scene.
Kate Blanchett in it, maybe?
Yeah, I think maybe. I didn't get to see it, but in the trailer, there's a scene where there's a bus pulling up to some, street or what have you, and there's an old movie theater behind it, and the marquee says "Spaceman from Pluto."
Oh, amazing!
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
So a nice little Easter egg. Have you ever
Yeah.
gotten you've been around in entertainment, like I said, for a long time. I would watch you on Wild and Out, not even
Wild
joking.
Out, that's so funny.
I loved Wild and Out, Wild
Yeah, it was
Style, all the
Back
skits
in
that
the
y'all used
day.
to do. And it's funny to see you and Taryn, now all the on SNL. But
Yeah.
um,
And then
Did you-
Pete as well. Pete did a season
yeah,
of Wild and Out as well.
And then so for you though, obviously SNL is one of the biggest shows, if not the biggest show in television history. Have you been able to brush shoulders with anybody related to Back to the Future? Has any of the cast or Zemeckis,
Right.
Spielberg, anybody that you've been able to meet?
None of the cast, although I would freak out. Spielberg, I think Spielberg's like friends with Lauren, and it was my first season as a cast member, because I was a writer for 3 years and then joined the cast. So it was my first season as a cast member, and it was the season finale. And there was a Jurassic Park The Ride sketch. The sketch took place on the ride, and I played like the ride attendant. So I was wearing what they wear at Universal Studios, which is like a, khaki themed or whatever, safari themed. It has a Jurassic Park logo on it on the shirt. And I was standing by the set. I think it was dress rehearsal, but it was like in between sketches where they were setting up, and I was just waiting before the sketch on the studio floor. And then I heard someone go, "Hey, I know that." And I look, and it's Steven Spielberg. And I'd never met Steven Spielberg. And to me, like Steven, he's one of those people that just seems larger than life. Like he's almost mythical.
He's not a real person,
And-
right?
Yeah. And like what he's been a part of and what he's done was so important to me growing up. So, and from hanging out, not expecting to see Steven Spielberg to see Steven Spielberg right next to you, I was just like almost, because that show you're used to working and seeing famous people. So I feel like it gives you a certain amount of, you're able to have some chill around people. Some people you might have grown up watching. But I just looked at him, and he was pointing to the Jurassic Park thing, like, "Hey, I know that." And I don't know why I said this. I said, and it just like came, like I wasn't thinking. I just said, "Yeah, the sketch doesn't take place in the actual Jurassic Park, though. It takes place on the ride." Okay? Like, what? And I don't know why I said it. And that's just the first thing that came out. And he went, "Oh yeah, I know. I think he had like read it, or he was aware." And he was like, "No, I know." And then he was very polite, and then he just kind of resumed being on his way. And I was just like, I met Steven Spielberg, and I said the weirdest, like, it doesn't take place in the park though. It takes place on the ride. Like he was saying it did, like, And then I spent like the next week being like thinking of stuff I could have said. Like, I wish I would have gone spared no expense and like look like something related to the movie, but that was my experience with Spielberg. But to this day, I think about that and I'm like, oh, it wasn't the worst thing in the world. I didn't like piss myself or vomit on him or something, but it was just odd. You know what I mean? Like, I wish that interaction I would have said something. At least that funny, kind of made sense.
What's funny too, I don't know if you know, but Steven Spielberg, legendarily, when he would ride the Jurassic Park ride, when it got to the top to do the big drop, he would have the ride stop and he would get off and then walk down this little back flight of steps because he didn't want to do the big drop.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's so funny. I like that he has that power, whereas anyone else, it's like, you're going down. Stop. Oh, that's so funny.
Wouldn't it be great if he just yelled, cut? Cut.
Cut. Reset. Oh, man, that's so funny. Yeah, but I haven't met anyone else. I know Michael J. Fox hosted back in the day because I remember watching, and I think they did like a Back to the Future sketch for his monologue or something and being fascinated by it, but no one else. I mean, I would like to. I'd like to meet everyone. And
yeah.
Robert Zemeckis too. But I'm sure, I wonder how many times people talk about Back to the Future and he's like, sure.
Yeah, I get it.
I've done other stuff too.
Yeah.
You liked it? Cool.
Yeah. You and everybody else in the world.
He's like, oh no, I see this dude. He looks like he was born in the 80s. He's going to talk to me about Back to the Future.
But again, also it should be a compliment that 35 years later, people still want to talk about this one movie that you did, that you actually created too. It wasn't like he just directed it, like Romancing the Stone. Right. He and Bob Gale, they created it. So I mean,
they wrote it, right? They wrote it together. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the turnaround sounded crazy too. Like, they didn't have that much time before it came out, and they finished shooting, I guess. So
they shot for that 6-7 weeks, and then they had a mandate to get it out by a certain time, or the studio literally said, we're not going to put the movie out if you don't get it done by this time. And then, they shot for that 6-7 weeks, and they're like, oh, we got to recast the main character. And then they
Don't worry, though.
Let's see, where is it? So I have these two things. So the original date for Back to the Future was July the 19th, 1985. And they released these little pins, right?
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Where'd you get that?
This was a deep dive find on, I believe it was eBay one day.
Oh, my God, it's gorgeous.
So it's supposed to be blue. The original logo was blue, and it was going to be July 19th. And then the studio did some test screenings, and they're like, this movie is great. Let's move up the release date 3 weeks or what have you to July 3rd, 1985.
Wow.
And they changed the colors. So then think about those poor editors. They were like, okay, we have this quick turnaround time. Wait a minute, we have 2 weeks less? What are y'all doing to me?
What? Because it's good? Okay, we're trying to make it better. Oh my God, that's crazy. I can't believe you have those pens. I have this. I forgot to. It's a DMC. I don't know if you can see.
DeLorean watch. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's not the car, but I wish it was. It's the next best thing. I can't believe. I remember the pins. I wish I could go back and as a kid be like, can I have one of those pens? It was like, I think it's when the third one came out, they screened all of them, but it was like, I watched the trilogy back to back to back with the back and the fonts. And I remember seeing it on a person who worked at the movie theater's vest. And I wish 10-year-old me was like, can I have one of those? Yeah, the fact that you have the original date on that pin is amazing.
Yeah, that's
on July 19th. I'm going back. Yeah, you have some incredible stuff. I mean, you probably met a lot of people working on your book, right?
So I got to talk to a lot of them, right? So I got to talk to Leah Thompson, Crispin Glover, Don Full-of-Love, who played Mayor Goldie Wilson.
Yeah, he's awesome.
The guy who played Marvin Berry gave me the greatest quote of all time to put on the back of the book.
What did he say?
So he said, here, hold on, let me see. So he said, Back from the Future by Brad Gilmore is one of the most engaging flights of fantasy that you will have. Gilmore has given us some stories and ideas that are unique, and you will love them for all time.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah,
what a cool dude.
He tied in, and then he said, be an Earth angel and give this some time to marinate on your brain. It's sure to set you on a new time travel adventure. It was a great quote. I had to put it. I told him, you need to put that on the back of the book. But yeah.
You'll be so engrossed. Your mind will be in that book. You'll lock your keys in your trunk.
Speaking of quotes, this would be my last question for you because I've literally kept you for longer than I expected.
Oh,
I apologize.
Good. All good.
Best quote from the movie. There's so many great ones. You're telling me you built a time machine out of a DeLorean, Heavy, Great Scott. Those are all really cool ones.
The stainless steel construction.
Yeah.
Ronald
Reagan, the actor. I mean, there's a lot of great ones. There's a lot of great ones. So what to you, what is Mikey Day's quintessential quote from Back to the Future? You've quoted a lot during this broadcast.
I know. So. I mean, sometimes there's weird ones that I've heard so much that are just like I'll find myself like, who the hell is John F. Kennedy? Like if I hear a name, I don't know, I'll be like, who the hell is blank? Just like involuntarily. For some, it's probably more obscure ones. Like I love, what's a rerun?
Right. Yeah.
Weight has nothing to do with it while they're walking to the school.
Yeah, those are the lines
that get me. A lot of Doc's runs are fantastic. Or witness the birth of Christ. That's something I always was fascinated by. In terms of, like, you input the date in the time circuits. Like, what technology makes you go to that date? Like, is it supplying a certain amount of power to the flux capacitor? You know what I mean? Like putting in the time circuits, what mapping, that was always not an issue, but I was always like, what's going on there? To me, I've justified it in my head. Like if you go back millions of years, it provides more like power to the, plutonium and the flux capacitor. But like if you're going back a week, it doesn't provide as much power. I don't know. In my thinking about it, in my dork ponderings, that's what I've come up with. I should ask Robert Zemeckis.
You should.
If I ever meet, and he'll be like, I don't know, dude, it's a movie. You bought it, right? It's so funny that you just buy it. You're like, yep, that could take you back in time. I can't believe it was going to be a refrigerator too. That would have been or whatever, a box or whatever.
It was a refrigerator, yeah. And then they ended up doing that in Indiana Jones 4, nuking the refrigerator.
Oh, yeah. He's like, I got my refrigerator.
We finally got it into the movie somehow. I'll actually send you an article that I just read today when we get off from Bob Gale talking about the original opening that they had shot with Eric Stoltz. This was the first time I had ever heard this, and it wasn't the clock opening. Yeah, no.
What
Marty
was it?
Marty was in detention, and he came up with some way to get out by setting off fire alarms or sprinklers. It was something weird. I read it today.
Really?
I'll send it to you. Yeah. Really
that's awesome.
Different. Yeah. So that's the footage I want to see. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, I want to see it all. Maybe Bob Gale has it at his house. In like a fireproof safe.
Yeah. In the yellow box that the plutonium came in is where he has it stored and safe. Yeah.
Use pinball machine parts. That's another line. That's great.
Use pinball machine parts is great. Mikey Day, I tell you, man, this was fantastic to talk to you. I feel like we could go on another couple hours. I really feel like we could.
Thank you. Hopefully I made sense. I know I rambled on a lot, but hopefully there's something usable in here of me kind of going off on tangents and stuff. But thank you for having me. It's awesome. And I'm excited to read your book.
It is on the way. That is the great Mikey Day from Saturday Night Live. Mikey, appreciate you, man.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Brad. Hey, the future is what you make it.
How cool is Mikey Day? Thank you again for joining us this week on Back to the Future, the podcast. Such a fun talk with Mikey Day. And the video version of that interview will be out soon, either on my YouTube channel or somewhere. It might be on the Action Industries channel, but I'll put the information whenever it drops. I'll let y'all know on the podcast if you want to go back and watch my interview with Mikey Day when we talk about Back to the Future. But that is all we have for you this week. We're going to have more Back to the Future, the podcast next week. Going to do something really fun next week that I'm really excited about. I've already banked this week about 3 more interviews that we're going to have for Back to the Future, the podcast, including some people who might have been in the movie. Stay tuned. We'll see you next week on Back to the Future, the podcast. I'm your friend in time, Brad Gilmore, and we will see you in the future.
Oh, Brad, what have you done now? Oh, Brad, what have you done now?